So, good morning or good evening to some. So, my topic is all about suggested safeguards for mercy death under allowing someone to die, mercy death, and mercy killing. So, let's get started. So, whether or not any of us believes that mercy death is morally justified, it seems inevitable that in the future, near or distant, it will become a widespread practice that is partially or completely legal. It is important, therefore, that some careful legal safeguards be proposed before this happens. Otherwise, ethics and the law may be caught by surprise, as they have been already by the actions of Dr. Kevorkian. And the two circuit courts of appeal decisions, besides, as a columnist, Ellen Goodman has said, most Americans support legal assisted suicide for the most personal of reasons. We just might want it someday. So, mercy killing or mercy death is widespread because some patients need it. Some are requesting that dapat na jud silang patyon kay maybe sa ilahang life kay makaingon na sila nga wala na yung purpose ang ilang pag-live or something na kanang for financial assistance, wala na, di na makaya sa family, that's why need nila ang mercy killing. So next. So there are types of safeguards. The first one is safeguards in the Oregon law. The Oregon law allows doctors to write prescriptions for aware adult, terminally ill patients who have asked for them both orally and in writing. There is a 15-day writing period, 2 witnesses, and a second doctor are required. Patients must be informed about other options and they must take the drugs themselves. On January 17, 2006, the Supreme Court voted to uphold Oregon's physician-assisted law. So it is already signed by law. And second doctor is required to this proposed law and already signed by Supreme Court. So the next is the second safeguard is safeguards proposed by Dr. Mayers. In Dr. Christopher Mayers' discussion of the lack of autonomy problem and physician-assisted suicide, he has presented several safeguards. First, the first request for death assistance must occur at least 2 months prior to provision of such assistance. Second is the request must be repeated twice more in 2-day and 1-week intervals. Third, all requests must be initiated by the patient and cannot come as the result of a question from any other party. Fourth, all requests must be witnessed in writing by someone who has not economic interest in the patient's life or death and who can attest that the request appears to be made by a competent person who is under influence from medications or from pressure from family or loved ones. And the third one is, or the fifth one rather, the request that assistance must be reversible at any time. The patient must be informed that such a reversal, if it were requested during the death assisting procedure, could worsen his or her medical condition. So that's the suggested safeguards that proposed by Dr. Mayers. So it is very understandable and very easy to cope up with. So the third and the last one is Russell safeguards. Ruth Russell, 1946, in her article Moral and Legal Aspects of Euthanasia, published in 1974 in the Humanist magazine, states her belief that first, the first request for death assistance must occur. Wrong. So, the third safeguard and the last is Russell safeguard. Ruth Russell, 1946, in her article Moral and Legal Aspects of Euthanasia, published in 1974 in the Humanist magazine, states her belief that first, any law legalizing physician-assisted suicide should be permissive rather than mandatory or compulsory. So it must have a permission from the patient. Second one is there can be no secrecy. Third, there has to be written notarized request. Fourth, an advisory panel is to be used. Fifth, several doctors must be involved. Sixth, a waiting period will be required. And seventh, it will be a criminal offense to falsify any documents, coerce patients or next of kin, or perform any malpractice involving any act of euthanasia. So that's the Russell safeguards and what he believes about the safeguard of mercy killing. So safeguards has a evaluations. So here is the meaning of the evaluation of safeguards. Most of the safeguards mentioned earlier are significant, but some are more necessary than others, and there may be additional ones that should be included. The following safeguards should be a part of any law that permits physician-assisted suicide. So here are the evaluation of safeguards. So, first, permissive rather than compulsory or mandatory. Any law that authorizes physician-assisted suicide should, of course, be permissive rather than mandatory. No one but the person desiring assistance or his or her designated agent should request it. Further, no one should be forced or coerced in any way to request with assistance. And physicians or either healthcare personnel should not be required to carry out any such request against dictates of their moral conscience. So, that's the first evaluation of safeguard. The second one is a written request. So, there must be no secrecy involved. Everything must be done in the open and overboard. Any such request should be made in writing by the person requesting, and this request should be witnessed by disinterested persons and notarized. An advance directive could be used for this purpose, or additional pages or section should be added to them. Although it may not be necessary that such request be notarized. Any such request can be revoked by the patients or the designated agents at any time, either orally or in writing, but patients should be warned. As Dr. Mayer suggests, that revocations after the process has begun may result in the worsening of the patient's condition. So, if you'll you want na mo kuan mo anang mercy killing and mercy death, it must have a written request so that para ma-evaluate siya if needed na ba siya og mercy killing or mercy death. So, next, third is a waiting period. There should be a waiting period, and Dr. Mayer's suggestion of 2 months from the time of request to actually providing assisted suicide is a fair one. Mayer's assistance on the necessity of repeating the request 2 days later and 1 week later and perhaps 1 month later as well as is sound. There could be places provided on any form used where patients or their agents could repeat or verify the initial request. Before and during this waiting period, other options such as hospice care, appropriate pain control, and whatever the appropriate care is available should be carefully explained. So, it is very essential to have a waiting period. So, next is counseling. Also, before and during the waiting period, a trained counselor should be made available to aid patients in making their decisions and to ensure that they are rationally competent to request assisted suicide and are not being forced or coerced in any way by families, friends, or healthcare personnel. If there is serious question of mental competency, psychiatrists or psychologists could be called in to present their findings. So, before ka mo undergo og physician assisted suicide, you must have the counseling first. Dapat pa ka-counsel ko imo ba idayon ang assisted suicide before ka mo undergo ana. So, next is more than one doctor. More than one doctor should be involved in the diagnosis and prognosis of patients' illness and lives. And patients will have to be fully informed concerning their condition. So, dili lang kay isa lang ka doctor ang naa kung imo na i-undergo na siya nga na assisting suicide. So, we must have to have a 2 or more doctors na maka-witness para ma-discuss og maayo ang illness sa tao nga mo go ana nga procedure. So, sixth is Any abuse of safeguards punishable as a criminal offense. So, any coercion of patients or next of kin, falsification of documents, or performance of any malpractice involving any act of mercy death should be deemed criminal offenses punishable by law. So, sa mga people na mo force sa tao nga mo undergo ani kay naa siya offense to those who are wanted na mo undergo nga procedure. So punishable siya as a criminal offense. So next is assisted suicide should be painless. It should go without saying that any mercy death or assisted suicide should be painless, which is why physicians should administer it and perform it in a comfortable, pleasant place of the patient's choice. So, dapat ang pasyente dili maka-feel og pain. It must like sa uban gani, for example kay injection away ang pagkill or na uban tablets na ipainom para kanang comfortable ra sad ang kanang patient nga mo undergo ana about dili sila maka-feel og sakit. So choice pod sa patient kung unsa ilahang gusto nga pamaagi sa pagpatay. So next is naa sad siya other possible safeguards. So, additional safeguards could involve having a judge or court commissioner approve the mercy death after hearing and seeing all of the evidence, including the patient's own words, if that is feasible. If not, then the words of patients, families, and designated agents should be heard. Also, there could be, as Ms. Russell has suggested, a panel or committee such as bioethics committee of involved. Either of these, especially the court situation, could prove to be restrictive of patients' autonomy, but either certainly would make it harder for a questionable mercy death to be carried out. So, more na siya ha, sa number 18, more na siya ang other possible safeguards. So that's it. So next topic. So concluding remarks on mercy death. Okay. Neither mercy death nor physician-assisted suicide is being advocated here, but merely practical suggestions for legal safeguards. What would pretty much eliminate the need for these actions is an expansion of the hospice approach, especially as it involves pain and symptom control. It is probable that suffering people, terminal or otherwise, were rendered as free as possible of pain and discomfort. There would be less need for mercy death, physician-assisted or otherwise, yet to establish a more sensible approach to pain. And next of that is pain and symptom control would require radical changes in the training of physicians and to a lesser extent pharmacists. These professionals would then have to give autonomy to those patients and their families who are now in real need of such control. Dr. Meyers, who is the one who proposed the topic before, nato nang mention si Dr. Meyers, thinks it is unlikely that such changes will take place in the near future. And as long as they don't, people will continue to request assisted suicide and to seek out people such as Dr. Kiverken. If mercy death is to be allowed and legalized, then there needs to be a guarantee that it will be conducted as morally and legally as possible. So, nagkuan sa ng mga doctors ba na it must be kanang legal na siya para kay samang good na mabuhat ani nga suicide or ubang patients nga mo request og napatyon na lang sila kay lagi nagsuffer na sa mga sakit or unsa sa ilang life kay pwede ba ka mapriso if ikaw lang ang mabuhat ana. So it must be a dapat professional doctors of course ang mabuhat jud ana, and dapat ana siya permission sa law sa balaod. So next is, so I have here the example cases for study and discussion. So case 1, man trapped by fire in his car. So ato siyang i-solve or sa tong banabanaon siya, di ba? So a truck overturns on one of our major highways, and the engine catches on fire, engulfing the cab, where the driver is trapped. A highway patrol officer arrives in the scene and realizes that no one can get near enough to the cab to get the driver out. The driver sees the patrolman and begs the officer to shoot him so that he won't have to suffer the horror of burning to death. The officer is close enough to kill him instantly. What should he or she do? So if you were the patrolman, imo ba siyang patayon kay gi-request niya or dili? So if you were the kanang patrolman, of course mapiso ka if imo siyang patyon, di ba? Kay you're not permitted by the law nga mopatay og tao. Kay lagi gi-request siya sa katong laki nga na trap sa car, di ba? So you should not, dili siya dapat i-shoot. So mo na siya atong analysis sa case 1. Kay pwede kang punished sa kanang og criminal abuse. So next is case number 2. So a 24-year-old man named Robert who has a wife and child is paralyzed from the neck down in a motorcycle accident. He has always been very active and hates the idea of being paralyzed. He is also in a great deal of pain, and he has asked his doctors and other members of his family to put him out of his misery. After several days of such pleading, his brother comes into Robert's hospital ward and asks him if he is sure he still wants to be put out of his misery. Robert says yes and pleads with his brother to kill him. The brother kisses and blesses Robert and then takes out a gun and shoots him, killing him instantly. The brother later is tried for murder and acquitted by reason of temporary insanity. Was what Robert's brother did moral? Do you think he should have been brought to trial at all? Do you think he should have been acquitted? Would you do the same for a loved one if you were asked? So the question, we will be going to answer the question. So if I were to be Robert's brother, so maluoy ta, diba? Like maluoy ta sa to ang brother makakita nga miserable na sa iyang kahimtang, and lagi ka nang wala na siya makita nga wala na siya purpose sa pag-live kay paralyzed na iyang lawas at all. And Pero dili jud dapat, di ba, kay wala man kay permission sa balaod nga patyon nimo imuhang brother because mao iyahang gi-wish, mao iyahang gusto ipabuhat nimo. So dili good. So next is, do you think he should have been brought to trial at all? Of course, dapat siya ma-brought sa trial. It's because again, wala siya permission sa law. Do you think he should have been acquitted? So, answered na siya. Would you do the same for a loved one if you were asked? So, if ako ang pangutanon, if gi-ask ko nga buhaton na siya, kay lagi makita nga nag-suffer na, and naglisod na gid sa life, kay I guess kanang mo-consult ta og mga doctors, sa mga lawyers of if okay ba siya, mag-counseling ba like sa ato ang gi-discuss earlier na we must have a assisted suicide ba, physician assisted suicide, or the doctors must be involved sa kaninga situation niya para sad ka ng less again murag wala sa sa balaod ba, kay ang nag-perform is professional man, and then nasa permission sa law nga buhaton na siya. So that's it sa case 2. Case 3. 67-year-old woman wanting to die. A 67-year-old woman has been sick for the last 10 years with heart, lung, and kidney problems that have given her a great deal of pain. Pain and discomfort. In her own words, her life is a misery and not worth living. Her children all are grown, and she lives alone with her husband, who is 68. She has talked with him on several occasions during the past 2 years, begging him to help her to die. She has told him that she is tired of living and that gets no pleasure from her life anymore. On this particular morning, they discussed her life and death for 4 hours, and again, she begs him to help her to die. Finally, he gives in to her wishes and takes her out to the garage, put her in the car, turns on the engine with the garage door closed, and goes back into the house for about an hour. At the end of the hour, he takes her out of the car, calls the police, and tells them what he has done. They arrive on the scene and arrest him for murder. Did the husband do the right thing? Did the wife have the right to request the action of her husband? Did he have an obligation to satisfy her request? Should he have been arrested? So, same as well sa case number 2. So, same answer, diba? So, again, the husband did not do the right thing. It's because nakasa siya sa balaod sa law, and then wala siya permission to do the crime. So next is, ang answer sa case 3 is same rasad sa case 2. So next is, let's proceed sa case 4, the last one. Dr. Kevorkian originally invented a suicide machine that he could hook up to an intravenous line that is inserted into a person's arm, so that the person can push a button or release a clamp and administer a fatal but painless dose of chemicals. More recently, he used carbon monoxide that people can inhale until they die. Few of the people who use this machine or the carbon dioxide were terminally ill people. For example, one 43-year-old woman had just been diagnosed as having Alzheimer's disease. One had severe pelvic pain, and another had multiple sclerosis. Do you think that what he was doing was moral or immoral? Why? Would it make any difference to your decision if the people had been terminally ill? Do you agree with what was done to the doctor? And you had the means, like Dr. Kevorkian, to do so. What would you do? And why? Would you like doctors have the right to assist people in committing suicide? Why or why not? Would the people have to be terminally ill in your option or not? Why? So let's answer the question, guys. So so um it okay ra siya if doctors ang mo-assist sa patient which is terminally ill nga mo assist nila through assisted suicide kay again base na ang patient kay dili na worth living ilang life or na sila or makita nila ilang life nga miserable na. So as they wish, dapat permitted ang pag-assist sa procedure, no? So it's very understandable already, kaya na-discuss na siya earlier sa safeguards and evaluation. So next topic is all about mercy killing. So mercy killing is similar to mercy death in the sense that it involves a direct action taken to end someone's life. The difference is that mercy killing is not done at the person's request. People who perform mercy killing may assume that the person they are going to kill wants this act to be done, but they don't know for sure. Nor do they have the person's explicit request or permission to perform the act. Very often, the decision to go ahead with a mercy killing is based upon a belief that the victim's life is no longer worth living because he or she is existing as a mere mindless organism, not as a full human being. Therefore, mercy killing can be defined as a termination of someone's life without the permissions of the person's explicit consent by direct means from a motive of mercy. That is, in an attempt to end suffering and or meaningless existence. Obviously, the greatest moral problem associated with mercy killing is that is opposed to allowing someone to do mercy death. So, in this case, the patient's consent cannot be obtained, nor can his or her desires be known for sure. Mercy killers must come to a decision about someone else's life without the person's permission for acquiescence. So, the difference between mercy death and mercy killing is mercy death kay di ba ang mga patient mo'y mag-decide na to end their lives. So, ang mercy killing is ilahang family ang mo decide na unsa ba like i-perform na ba ang act of mercy killing, pati na ba kay ang example of that is kanang masakiton na like machine na lang ang gadala sa ilang life or like paralyzed sa ilang life or brain dead na or nana something like that. So ang ilang life ba is not worth living for, so mo na siya. So next is there is an argument against mercy killing. So arguments against. So many of the arguments that have been used in relation to mercy death and allowing someone to die apply also to mercy killing. Again, the main aspect that distinguishes mercy killing from the other two categories is the lack of consent on the part of the victim. So, ang difference lang from mercy death again kay wala siya permission sa victim or sa patient, kay wala siya consent or um kay di ba wala na ba like di na ba sila ka-talk if ever nga paralyzed na sila or something like that. Ang mo decide na ani is ang agent or ang family sa victim na perform ato nga act. So first argument is the direct violation of the value of life principle. So, mercy killing is a direct violation of the value of life principle, especially because, unlike defense of the innocent, war, and capital punishment, it usually involves taking the life of an innocent person. As in the mercy death situation, the argument here is that murder is murder, regardless of motive. Therefore, mercy killing is nothing less than the premeditated murder. This argument is even more convincing here than in the case of mercy death, because in this case, people either haven't given or can give the consent to having their lives terminated. So, it is very understandable that there is a direct violation of the value of life principle. It's because there is no consent of the victim. So, mao na siya ang direct violation of the value of life principle. So, second is the domino argument. So, because the consent of patients cannot be obtained, an outside decision about the worth, value, or meaning of their lives has to be made. And according to this argument against mercy killing, this sets a dangerous precedent. In the first place, who has the right to decide whether any person's life is worthy, has value, or is meaningful? What standards are to be used when making such a decision? Won't the sanctioning of such an action set a dangerous precedent for the elimination of old, senile people? Can we allow such decisions to be made? If so, by whom should they be made? This is certainly one of the more serious problems related to mercy killing, and it is one that does not affect either allowing someone to die or the mercy death. To so great an extent, in both of the later cases, the individual decides the worth of his own life is, whereas in mercy killing, one person decides for another. So that is the domino argument. Kay you, the victim, won't decide, but the other people will decide if they will perform the act of mercy killing. So third is the possibility of finding cures. So both this argument, which states that mercy killing should not be authorized because cures may be found, and the criticism of this argument are the same as those for allowing someone to die and mercy death. So there is also arguments against mercy killing. So that's why they're having an argue na ikuan ba na siya ba ipapasa na ba siya sa balaod. It's because basig na apay cure sa kana nga sakit. So believe sa tayo na nothing is impossible, diba? So this is the most, I guess, the strongest manggulor na argument kay naa man possibility of finding cures of an ill person or someone nga who wants to undergo with mercy killing. So that's why. So next is arguments for mercy killing. So kani siya kay arguments for na siya ha, di na siya against. So let's proceed. So first, mercy for the living dead. The main argument for mercy killing is that it is not a violation of the value of life principle because in most cases the people killed are not fully alive as human beings. Rather, they are existing as mere organisms or a network of organs and cells. It is an act of mercy. A proponent of mercy killing might argue to end the life of those people who, although not brain dead, or have suffered 80% brain damage. Even if such people recover from their comas, the damage to their brains is so extensive that their lives will never again be normal. They will have a plant-like existence, exhibiting no personality or real human consciousness or whatsoever. Therefore, it is an act of mercy to end their existence. So, the main criticism of this argument is that one actually is murdering such people because they cannot be declared dead under any acceptable medical or legal criteria. A dangerous precedent is set when someone is sanctioned to directly end their lives. It is one thing to allow them to die by refusing to use any extraordinary means to save them. If they were attacked by pneumonia or kidney or heart failure, it is quite another. However, it directly murdered them even out of a motive or mercy. So, this argument, mercy for the living dead, is that they did not exist na ba like okay na siya na naana, 'di ba? So it's very understandable sa phrase. So next is the financial and emotional burdens. So people with extensive brain damage along with many other sick and injured people are financial and emotional burdens upon their families and on society. Such burdens often are tremendous, and some argue they serve no significant purpose because patients in such situations gain absolutely nothing from their maintenance except the continuation of what is assumed to be a minimal and worthless existence. The main criticism of this argument is that finances should not be the determining factor where human life is concerned. It is true that the emotional burden often is difficult to bear, but here again, we should not sanction the sacrifice of one human life simply to ease the emotional burden upon another. So, usa pud sa factor, di ba, nga mo kuan ang mercy killing is that ang family nga nahabilin sa usa ka patient kay they are na-burden na sila bala sa bayaran sa hospital and of course sa emotional, di ba? So, some families, di ba, kana mo decide na lang na ipa-mercy death o pa-mercy killing sa patient para wala na ang burden. So, but dinasad sa argument na kanang dili daw i-matter ang financial burden para lang ma-end or makuan ang life sa usa ka human. So that's the argument. So next is the patient's desire to die. Another argument for mercy killing is that if patients with brain damage could communicate with us, they would say that they would rather be killed than linger on as burdens to their families and society, or to exist as an organisms without consciousness. So, the main criticism here, however, is that we cannot know any of this for certain because the patients cannot communicate. It is possible that advanced directives could be revised so as to include mercy killing as well as allowing someone to die. But it might be very difficult to get such documents legalized. Faced with such a directive, the state probably would feel that it had the obligation to perceive and protect human life rather than authorize the execution of innocent people regardless of the status of their existence. So, if maka-communicate lang ba ang victim nato, di ba, kay they don't want to suffer anymore. So, mo na siya nga kani nga argument is kanang it's also a burden sa society. So the fourth, and the last one is one of the strongest arguments against both mercy death and mercy killing is the possibility of establishing legal safeguards. So, such actions were sanctioned, they undoubtedly would be abused. For example, if it were legal to perform mercy killing on people who had reached a certain point in their lives or a certain age, wouldn't such a law invite abuse people who wanted such things as organs to transplant, inheritance, or the elimination of personal finances, burdens, and couldn't it become an instrument of revenge or of other motives usually connected with killing that is not mercy. So, as we have seen, it's possible to establish safeguards similar to those that have been suggested to mercy death or assisted suicide. So, the main criticism of the argument is that although most of these safeguards provide a mercy death, few of them would be any use in protecting people against mercy killing against their wills. Any legislation that would give power to the state or to certain individuals to take lives of those who were too unworthy or too useless to live would be extremely hard to enforce, and there would be a little protection. So, there, mo na siya ang pinaka-strong argument, like, wala man gud tay will sa usa ka victim na to do the procedure of mercy killing. So that's why gi-argue gini sila og pag-ayo ang kaning the possibility of establishing legal safeguard na kuan na kanang desire. So next is also that would be the last. So I hope you learned something and have a good day. Thank you and God bless.